And good evening, our fellow lovers of love, and thank you for joining us on this excursion down the stream of consciousness towards the river and tranquility and on towards the lake of love.
Yay!
Hey, maybe it's going to be a good show tonight. I didn't screw that one up because we were just talking behind the stage about how that's kind of screw up the intro, and then this is the one intro I don't screw up, so there's no way to have the conversation about me screwing them up and being a running gag, which completely ruined my whole intro. But I can't screw it up on purpose. Maybe that was the thing. I was expecting to screw it up and got it right. I don't understand myself sometimes. But it's been that kind of a week. I've been, I go through the week and I have a bunch of philosophical points to start the show, to kind of theme the show as we go through here. And this week, it was an interesting week. We came across parenting questions from my timeline, from my newsfeed. I use kind of my friends and my network as a way to kind of guide that, just to kind of see what's going on in the world. I have a nice, diverse group. And you're dealing with parenting issues and how to deal with the evolving culture issues and all the various routine things. These are routine things that happen day to day, but because of the way life currently is, there's a bit more stress to it. Whether there needs to be or not is not actually, is not a relevant question at this moment, because it is. It's the way it is, and we have to kind of accept it. But how do we navigate it? And it occurred to me that, one of the things we're not doing right now is asking questions. We're not good at it. And the reason we're not good at asking questions is because we're not good at listening. I mean, if you're going to ask a question, you have to be good at listening for the answer. You have to be willing to hear something you don't want to hear. You have to be willing to hear something you disagree with and contemplate it honestly and honorably. And it's hard to do that when we're living in fear. Be it fear of a virus, fear of overreach, or just fear of all of it.
Free-floating fear.
There's a lot of extra fear these days, and it's been relentless. Political fear, cultural fear, medical fear, educational fear. You got children. What's the future of education look like? We don't know. And that uncertainty brings a sense of fear. Even if we don't think of it as fear, even if we don't necessarily feel afraid, we are human animals. It's fight or flight is an instinct. We can process it differently. Our brains can process it differently, but our bodies don't. Our bodies are very base. It's happy or stressed or at rest. That's your three states. You're happy, you're stressed, or you're at rest. It's a gross oversimplification, but and how do we balance that? Because stress is a part of life. Trying to find happiness, whatever that actually means. It's ill-defined as happiness is. How do we find happiness? And then how do we make sure we have enough rest? Physical and mental and emotional rest. How do we navigate that? We do by asking questions of ourselves, of our families, of people who know more than we do. But we have to be willing to listen. Far too many of us aren't willing to listen. For whatever reason. I'm not going to sit here and judge and say why, because quite frankly, there's as many reasons as there are people. But I was thinking the other day, there's a concept in science fiction that if you go back in time and you change one thing, think of the movies Back to the Future. You change one small thing, you can completely change the future. But there's a flip side of that. You can change the future now. You just don't know it. Everything you do can change the future. Everything you don't do can change the future. Be careful how you tread. Be conscious, not just for yourself, but it's selfish to want the world to be a better place in the future. You have people you love. You have future generations of your family. We all want it to be better. But I will leave everybody on this thought with this. Over the course of 30 years, life doesn't get worse. It always gets better. The only time that wasn't true was the fall of the Roman Empire. And it took 50 years for it to start to rebuild. So over a course of time, life always gets better. Slow. Sometimes it's fast. But generations, older people, we always go, everything looks like it's falling apart. My grandfather said it. My mother says it. I say it. But yet, look back over the course of history and look at any 30-year period, and you can see that we've advanced. Do you really want to go back to 1990? Do we really want to go back to the 1960s or the 50s? Pick a time period in the past. How many of us actually want to go back in time? More than a decade. And we only want to go back in a decade because it feels simpler. But there's this trick. It wasn't. It was just as chaotic as it is now. It's just the way life is. All right. With that out the way, my love, how have you been this week?
It's been a down week for me. It's hot. I can't go outside. I got the summer blues.
Then you have medication, so you have to stay out the sun, out of direct sun.
I have to stay out of direct sun.
And so, yeah, that's pretty hard. But I got a question. Our very first question on the list, and I'm going to ask it of you, because you've gone through a lot in your life, from alcoholism, bipolar disorder, divorces, child custody issues. We don't have to go into detail, but you've run the gamut. So, what mindset changed your life?
What mindset changed my life?
Yeah, what mindset changed your life?
That things are always changing. Nothing is forever. Nothing is forever. And that goes good or bad. So I enjoy the things that I have in my life while they're there. I treasure them. And the bad times of my life, my darkest hour, I just kept in my mind that things were going to change. Nothing stays the same forever. And I have a belief in God. I believe that God is watching out for me, and I feel that I'm very blessed. I'm very blessed.
See, for me, my mindset change was, and it's a soft change. It's when I actually started to understand that I had anxiety disorder, not depression. I wasn't. The fact is, I was fundamentally different than most people, and that was okay. That the rest of the world was just going to have to accept it, and so I never had to. For most of my life, I was trying to be something other than what I was. Now, for a good chunk of it, I didn't understand, but still, you're still trying to force yourself into a box that doesn't fit you. Whether you understand that it doesn't fit you or why it doesn't fit you is kind of irrelevant. You're trying to stick yourself into a box. It's like a gay person trying to be straight. It's just not going to fit. They're just not going to never be totally happy. And so once I accepted that it was that anxiety disorder, I don't even like using the term disorder, that I just am the way I am. That normal is a fiction. Yes, it's true that I have to be careful because I can bounce between fight and flight very easily, much easier than other people do. But I've learned how to control it, more or less. If I'd had an earlier start, I'd be much better at it. But we didn't know these things when I was a kid. You can't blame them. You can't shake your fist in ignorance. It doesn't. No, nobody knew.
Nobody knew. Yeah.
Or there was a handful of people that knew it. You can't really. Well, they weren't around me, so how was I? You can't blame anybody because nobody knew. Or you can, but it's just going to lead to you being miserable. And ultimately, you're responsible for picking yourself back up. Now, I want to be clear, I have a lot of help. I have friends and family that love me and support me and give me everything I need to move down this path. But when you look out on the streets and we see these homeless people and we wonder how they got there, I don't wonder. I know. You have some kind of emotional or mental issue, you get disconnected from your friend and family network, and next thing you know, you're all alone. And the next network you build is people who are otherwise homeless, and you get stuck. And if you have anxiety disorders or bipolar disorders, it's going to be very hard for you to trust systems. And how do we change that mindset? By asking questions. There's no easy answer to our problems in society. There's no easy answer to our problems in life. There's no easy answer to our problems about how to raise your child properly. And we have to accept that. The mindset that there is no easy answer. And if you ever come across something that has an easy answer, take it, be thankful, and move on. Because it's not going to come across very often. I mean, it will happen. Not very often. Be thankful that you get that opportunity. Okay, so this first article we've got here caught your attention. The biggest thing that therapy taught her about her anxiety.
Well, it gave me something I hadn't thought about before.
Yes, I want to remind everybody that you can find these articles on our website, latenightLove.us, and we link to all of the show prep on the website. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, Lon.
That's a fight. But the person who wrote the article took the mindset that what I call doom brain, always thinking up the negative, which I have, kind of is a buffer against getting disappointed, getting your hopes up too high. That's why when something goes well, I'm happy. I'm ecstatic. Oh, yay, something went right. I was wrong. I'm happy to be wrong.
Yes. Well, we talk about managing expectations, but there's a difference between managing expectations and doom brain. But that's why we need therapy. That's why it's called disorder. If it made sense, it wouldn't.
Well, that's just something positive that the author had pulled out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, it does protect you from danger in a sense. The
Yeah,
problem is it
yeah,
overprotects you from danger, and
well,
that's
yeah.
just as dangerous as that is just as dangerous. And so it's, like anything, it's the extreme is the problem. It's, you know, I spent a long time in therapy, and I always learned something new. Not every single session, but over the course of say 3, 4 sessions, I always learned 2 or 3 things about myself. And the minute I stop learning about myself is when you're done with therapy or you need to move on to a different therapist, depending upon your uh, situation. But it's always learning for me about myself. Is that therapy is a great opportunity to ask questions to yourself and give yourself honest, sometimes even brutally honest answers. And it's okay because ultimately the only person who's judging you is yourself. You're your own worst judge. And if you're not, you've got problems. You should go to therapy. Now, you shouldn't be overly harsh on yourself, or you should go to therapy. But if you need to be your own moral judge,
Yeah.
and you need to hold yourself to a relatively high standard. Otherwise, you're not. But don't do it blindly. Understand why. There's a lot of questions when you sit there and you work on personal philosophies, whether it's what you need out of therapy, whether it's how you raise your children, whether it's your philosophy on achieving life, what you want out of life. There's a lot of thought that goes into it, and it evolves, changes. We talk about that all the time, how, we evolve. And so as we evolve, what we want, need, desire out of life evolves. Man, it's just the way the life works. Okay, so what we got next? I missed my thing.
Why post about my mental health on Facebook?
Well, I can tell people why I do.
Okay.
I have over the last few years developed not just through political workings and that, I have people who listen to me for whatever reason. And I have a perspective that most people can't understand, and I have an ability to communicate that in a way that people who don't experience anxiety disorder specifically, but mental health in general, I have a way of communicating that with people who can't understand because they haven't experienced it. I can walk that fence. Ability, or do not yet have the strength. And it's not for awareness. Awareness is BS. I don't buy awareness. It's to educate. It's to cure ignorance. And I want to be clear, there's nothing wrong with being ignorant. It just means you haven't known something yet. The only thing wrong is when you're willfully ignorant. There's nothing wrong with ignorance. I'm ignorant on lots of subjects. I couldn't weld anything to save my life. Completely ignorant on it. Yeah, I could learn if someone would teach me. But that's what I'm out here to do. I'm out here to teach. I'm out here to give a voice in the dark for people who need it. That's why one of the reasons why we call it late night love. It's for those who are lonely at night. Not just lonely for romantic love, lonely for human connection, lonely for understanding. And you never know how many people you can reach. You never know the impact you can make. One small change can change the future. And if you would like to send me and Lovey a note, you can send it at Dear Lovey at love at latenightLove.us. You can reach me on Twitter at JazzRack or on our Facebook page at The Late Night Love. Okay, so now what do we got? We're going to go off into some discussion about child raising. Why is free play?
Free play is disappearing in our culture?
Well, we talk about fear, and it started out of fear.
Why?
People were afraid that their children were going to get hurt or worse. And so we started to become helicopter parents. And then the side effect of starting to become kind of helicopter parents is you start intervening in your child's life all the time. Not just hovering over them while they're at the playground and watching them while they're at the playground. Now you're watching them while they're doing homework. Now you're watching them while they're playing video games with their friends. Now you're watching how him and his buddies are playing out in the backyard and preventing them from doing all the things that children do to learn how to interact with each other. Part of the thing about children having free playtime with each other or themselves is that they learn how to negotiate play with their friends. Hey, do we want to play basketball or football today? How do you decide that? How do kids learn how to make those decisions amongst each other if their parents are always the ones intervening and setting up the games? We playing wiffle ball? Where's first base? Where's third base? How many bases? Are we playing right field, left field, or are we just playing half? Because we only have 5 people, so we can't play a full field. What are the rules? You make them up on the fly. How can you do that if parents are doing it for you? How can you learn to make decisions? How can you learn to negotiate with your peers? How can you learn the soft skills of communication if your parents are doing it for you? And it's not done out of malice. It's done out of care and concern. It's just, we talked about it earlier. You can overprotect something can cause as much damage as underprotecting. It just looks differently. You don't see it until 20, 30 years later. But it's still there. And so it's a dangerous thing. Childhood is a chance for children to learn. But we all know we learn better by doing. We also know that failure teaches lessons that success cannot. And if children can't practice failure as children, what happens when they become an adult and failure is a routine part of life? Because it is. Not colossal failures, but we're human beings. We fail a lot.
There's a lot, and there's everyday disappointment.
Yeah, and how can they be expected to negotiate with terms with their boss if they haven't learned how to negotiate terms on the playground with their friends? That's where it starts. We forget the soft education. We just forget it. We think education is about school books and classrooms. And no, it's much more than that. It's included. Yes, it's included. But there's so much more about raising a child to become
Oh,
by either overprotecting them or underprotecting them. And let's be clear, we're going to fail. You're not going to walk that line perfectly. It's impossible. But it's okay. Because you learn. And that's what life is about, right?
Yeah.
Getting better.
Yeah, getting better.
Asking questions. Okay, so where did I mess up? How do I be better the next time something similar comes along? Or the next time I have to make a decision, how do I not screw it up so bad? How do I maintain my composure better? Whatever it happens to be. Asking hard questions and giving yourself honest answers. Yeah. So, why are we losing free play? Because we're afraid. We're afraid of what might happen instead of afraid of what might not happen. Anyway, all right. So we've got 20. All right.
We've got 5 minutes till break.
Okay, so I got something. I was reading on my timeline today. Well, we're not going to go question. We're going to go off the thing. It's a parenting question, and he says, "How does he? What was the phrase? All right, I'll set it up. His son, I'm assuming almost preteen, teenager, went and bought a video game, and then they went to I don't know, some festival somewhere. And of course, his son got upset because he wanted to go home and play his video game. And so at those ages, sometimes the kids get mad and they do the whole "I hate you" thing, right?
Uh-huh.
And so you end up with this. Okay, fine. If you punish me, I'll take away your electronics. Largely because he was screaming, probably not because he was saying "I hate you," and it kind of escalates. Next thing you know, he's grounded from his electronics for 5 weeks. And you're going, how the hell did we get here?
How did this happen?
How the hell did we get here? And you go, how do I deal with this without being overly harsh and being a dick, right? Because you've realized you've kind of gone overboard for what was going on, but at the same time, we bought him the game he wanted. We just wanted him to go to where the family was going to go to the festival where we bought him the game anyway, or not, so we didn't need to have this kid lose his cool. But how do you teach him to not lose his cool? How do you manage that whole mess?
Well, first you got to apologize for losing your cool.
Well, I don't know if you have to apologize for losing your cool yet. Maybe that's the thing. But first, I think we need to understand what happens when children are screaming, "I hate you." They're trying to hurt you with the only tool they know how, emotion.
Yes.
But they're not doing it consciously. It's, they're angry and they feel hurt.
They're lashing out.
And they're lashing out. And they're children. So they don't know how to respond appropriately yet. They don't know how to control this burst of emotion along with the burst of hormones that they're dealing with. And likely a burst of adrenaline. And they don't know how to cope with all these things yet. But when you punish them for that, you're sending an accidental message. You're sending them that it worked.
Oh.
You're saying that, yes, you can hurt me that way, rather than you can't hurt me that way. Yeah. I know you're just upset. You can't hurt me when you're just upset. And you disarm that. In the long term, it disarms that type of behavior because subconsciously they know it doesn't work. But that's why the toddler throws the temper tantrum in the grocery store. Because
there was an epic one in my family this week. A throwdown on the ground, lashing around, throwing things, hitting her mother, screaming and yelling. It was world class, right in the middle of Target, in front of God and country.
Yes, and they do that because, well, as a child, they don't do that because they know it hurts you, but they know that it can get a response. Now, whether it gets the proper response or not is up to you as the parent, but you can teach them a poor lesson by how you respond to that.
Yes.
And it's the same way. What happened in this thing is you've escalated it to the point where it's who's gonna blink first? Who's gonna stop feeling pain first?
Yeah, you're in a cold war. God.
And that And you know, the thing is, you're an adult. You're the one who's responsible for not doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so while it's true, everything is true. He was completely out of bounds. But how to deal with that without creating the situation, making the situation worse, is difficult. And there's no right answer because, you know, we can't sit here and say we don't know the child, so I don't know what would necessarily work. And again, it's probably one of those things where what would have worked needed to be done 3, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And what you got to do now is, okay, how do we move on from here? How do we stop this cycle? Because the cycle is going to continue unless you actively stop it. You've set yourselves up to every time you have a disagreement, you have an argument because he now knows he has a way to hurt you. I'm feeling hurt, so I'm going to hurt you back. It's usually more effective on mothers than fathers, but dads, as a rule of thumb, dads just okay.
That's what I did. My favorite one was you look up the word bitch in the dictionary and there's your picture. It was all I could do not to laugh.
Obviously, laughing may have actually been the better response because then it completely disarms it. How in the hell can you use that again? If you get laughed at. What is it? You know, a tyrant can deal with being hated. They can deal with being feared. But what they can't cope with is being laughed at because being laughed at sucks all their power.
Uh,
So anyway, talking about sucking out all the power, Lovey needs a break, and so we will be back in a couple of minutes. And we are back. We want to thank our sponsor, and we want to let you know if you would like to help the show, you can go to, let me see if I can get these right. You can go to our locals community, latenightLove.locals.com, and you can help. I think it's $2 a month and $5 a month, depending upon the level. And I think I'm going to lower those prices, by the way. I just set up what was default. Or you can send us, and they also, you can tip posts over there. So if you want to go to locals, we would appreciate it. Or you can donate over at anchor.fm/late-night-love. And they got a donation button if you would like to help the show continue. All right. And speaking of continuing, put us right there. Well, there's your anchor.fm/late-night-love, if that was correct. By the way, you can send me a tweet over at Jazzrack, or you can send Dear Lubby over there a note at latenightLove.us.
I'd love to hear from you.
And you can find all our show notes and various social media things and whatnot over at latenightLove.us. As we've growing. Okay. So, back to our normal second half questions extravaganza. All right, my lovey. You want me to read these, or you want to read these today?
I'll read these.
All right.
My 10-year-old daughter treats her 11-year-old autistic brother like trash. She pushed him down the stairs yesterday. I think he will eventually snap and hit her. What do you think I should do?
Well, one, why are you worried about him eventually snapping and hit her and not worried about why she's being such a pain in the butt to him?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you've got your worried is too far down the line and not worried enough about, okay, where's this behavior coming from? Now, 10 years old, 10 and 11, and autistic son, having raised an autistic child, they take a lot of time and effort, and she may need simply be lashing out so she can get some attention. If I had to take a guess, and it's kind of a blind guess because of the information we don't know, but she's hurt, she's feeling something negative, and she's lashing out at her brother. And if she's lashing out at her brother, for some reason, she thinks she's responsible.
He's responsible.
Yes. She thinks he's responsible for whatever her anger issues are, whatever her pain is, whatever she's feeling, she's blaming him. And you're going to have to figure out how to work through it. And it may be she might just need some time.
She may need mother-daughter night.
Mother-daughter night, some father-daughter time, some, alone, special, unique time with grandpa. Maybe you need to focus on something she wants that she hasn't been able to get. Maybe she wanted to do gymnastics and hasn't been able to do it. And so you need to find some way, you need to be more encouraging of, whatever it is. But she's feeling, these things generally happen because they're feeling pain of some form, emotional pain, and they're lashing out. And so you deal with that. In this case, punishment isn't the answer because, quite frankly, it's going to make it worse because she's just going to blame him for being punished.
Yes.
She's feeling a victim. And so you've got to deal with that and get her past that. And it's hard. Our autistic children, depending upon how far they are, it's very difficult. It's very difficult on siblings. Because, you feel like you often have to take care of a sibling. And you have to watch out for them. You have to be extra careful. All this other extra burden that gets put on you. It's easy for them to feel. And they're children. They don't know how to process this properly. It's up to us to help them through it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, do something. Get her counseling. Spend some time with her before it actually gets worse. But I'd be more worried about her hurting him than him hurting her at this stage. Okay, that's next.
I am married, but I had an affair with someone. But now he is threatening to ruin my married life. What should I do?
Well, the sad reality is you reap what you sow. So what you can do is, at this stage, the only thing you can really do is to beat them to the punch.
Beat them to the punch. That's the only way to treat blackmailers. Take away their power.
That's it. And
damn the consequences.
Well, you're going to have the consequences anyway, so deal with the consequences. At least you have in the best way you can manage.
Yeah.
And at this stage, you getting in front of it,
control it somewhat.
Yeah, I mean, at this stage, once the ball is rolling, the ball is rolling. But your husband would much rather hear it from you.
Really?
Yeah. Trust me. Much rather hear it from you. Doesn't want to hear it at all, but if you're gonna hear it,
I hadn't thought of it. Yeah, I'd much rather hear it from you than find out on my own.
Or have the other person come.
Have the other person come and
tell you to deliberately trying to cause pain for both of you.
Oh God.
Yeah. Think about that.
What a mess.
Yeah. Well, what a tangled web we weave. And you're gonna have to unwind it. That's it. And the consequences are gonna be what the consequences are gonna be. But they're gonna be worse if you don't.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Would you kick your son or daughter out of your house if they were ruthlessly disrespecting you over a long period of time?
Well, it depends on the age and depends on what you're defining as disrespect.
Are they obeying house rules? Is that the issue?
House rules reasonable?
Yeah.
Are you being reasonable? Maybe you're the one. It's entirely possible that you're not being reasonable and you're being disrespected because you're not being respectful of them. Respect is a two-way street. Now, as a parent, you actually kind of start the process with a certain level of respect, but you can lose it. It's not guaranteed. You don't get it for all times and forever. Your behavior has impact on how much respect you have for other people have for you. And if you don't have respect for other people, they're not going to maintain respect for you. If you're lucky, they may not say anything. But that's not the same thing as having respect. And it's these things, I always say, start in the mirror. When you're dealing with children, start in the mirror. You're the adult. You set this up somewhere along the way. You had created this condition. Now, if they're an adult child, then you've got a different story. Because then you're under no moral obligation to take care of them anymore. Moral or legal obligation. You do it because of the kindness of your heart, because you love them, because you care about them, you want to see what's best for them, you don't want them to be hurt and out on the street and all the others various issues. But they should respect you for that. That's a big deal. That should garner a lot of respect.
Yes.
But if you hang it over their head all the time, so you can poison any well. Any well you dig, you can poison. And so while I'm not excusing child's behavior, I don't know enough about age or anything. But I'm assuming teenagers, because that's when this kind of thing shows up. And you're partly responsible for the conditions, and you're partly responsible for fixing it, and you as the adult are responsible for starting the process moving. You want children to be responsible and respectful, starts in the mirror.
Maybe some family counseling.
Yeah. Well, we're always for counseling, coaching, whatever you want to do. Family coach, life coach, counseling. Not everybody needs a counselor or a psychologist. Sometimes a life coach is perfectly fine for somebody.
Yes.
Just someone to bounce stuff off of. Just someone who's a good listener. Sometimes that's all you need. But I'm all for that. I'm always for that. Get kind of a external perspective from a trustworthy source. Yeah.
Okay, this next one is for you.
Uh-huh.
Should I tell her I want to be called Dad? My fiance has a daughter who's 24. I told her I want to be called Dad, but she says, I have a dad who I love. This is not up for discussion. I respect you, but you are not my dad. I'm upset. What should I do?
You're asking for too much. You don't, as a step parent or as a step parent or as a supplemental father figure, shall we say, you don't have the right to ask. You earn that right. You earn that role. That is not a role that you take. That is a role you earn. That is a role they give to you. You can't expect it. Expecting it poisons the well. In my case, I don't know. It's hard to know if I was lucky or what. That all I had to do was fight with ghosts. I didn't have to fight a living person. I didn't have to not fight. I don't let me rephrase this. I didn't have to manage a relationship with a living father. I had to manage a relationship with a father that had passed away. And so that is, you don't fight ghosts. You honor them. And in a sense, it shouldn't be that much different when it comes to a living parent. You honor the relationship they have with their biological father. You don't try to replace it. You're supplemental. You're added benefit.
You're a bonus.
They're a bonus to you.
Yes.
And it's not about you. It's about them. You're the adult. You're not going to be her father. It's not possible. But you can be a father figure. You can be the person that she turns to when she needs you. But she's not going to do that if you're demanding it. She's only going to do that if she feels comfortable going to you. This type of relationship literally has to be selfless. It can't be about you. Yeah, it hurts. You care. You love them. You would like them to call you your dad. I get it. I understand. But you're an adult. Move past it.
Deal with reality. This young lady told you very clearly where she stood, and you're not respecting her.
Yes, well, it's not only that. What you have to understand is you've actually lost some respect ground that you're going to have to rebuild. You've damaged the relationship unknowingly. Didn't intend to, but you've damaged the potential of the relationship by placing a demand that she clearly couldn't have. Now, personally, I would never ask that of a stepchild or even an adopted child. Now, depending upon the age of the adoption, but I would never ask that. Never ask.
I walked into this knowing that their mother is their primary relationship. I'm just a friend.
Yeah.
And that's the way it should be. And I'm happy they have a strong relationship with their mother because that's what's healthy for a child. Yeah.
But we do see this too often where adults are thinking of themselves instead of the children. I'm upset. So is she. And she's more important.
Yeah.
You're the adult. You know how to deal with being emotionally upset. You know how to cope. All right. What we got next?
I whacked my 6-year-old niece for breaking a wine glass. Her father, my brother, is angry with me. But shouldn't he be teaching her discipline and carefulness?
Well, one, it's not your child to whack. So regardless of whether it was whether theoretically it was an appropriate response, it's not the appropriate response for you. And two, why do you have a wine glass in the reach of a 6-year-old? They're 6. They don't have self-control at 6. Expecting them to is foolhardy. They're gonna if you leave breakable things out, 6-year-olds will break them.
This is you have unrealistic expectations of a 6-year-old.
Yeah. Well, why weren't you paying more attention? Why weren't you watching the child better?
Why didn't you get whacked?
Who's the adult? And yes, you can if it happens, you deal with it. You can explain, like 6-year-old, they can kind of comprehend that. Hey, you shouldn't have done that. Come on, look what happens. You have to clean up the mess, and you can help them. Well, it's glass, so there's not much help they can actually do. But you can make them kind of sit there and watch you clean up, and you can explain to them how they have to be careful and all that stuff. And some of it gets through.
Yes.
They get the disappointment. They're 6 years old. All you have to do is really express disappointment in them, and they feel it. But in a sense, even if it was something that deserved, say, a pat on a light tap on the butt to say, "Hey, that was not right. It's not your place."
Not your place.
And that was the mistake. Okay. And quite frankly, I don't like the term whack. You get a tap on the butt to reinforce a quick no over an immediate issue is one thing. I'm not all that fond of the term whack.
Okay. I don't either. All right, this next one. I think my dad knows about my period because my mom told him without my consent. And I don't want him to know. What should I do? Honey, he knows what age you are, and he knows you're going to get your period. Everybody does. All women, all young girls do. He kind of.
Well, and he has to know. He's your parent. He might have to take you to the doctor in an emergency one day, and the doctor might ask. You might be knocked out, and the doctor has to ask him, has she started her period yet? He's gonna need to have to know.
He's going to have to know.
And
this is medical information.
And here's the thing. I'm compassionate. I get why she's creeped out about it. I really do. I understand. I wouldn't. If I was in her shoes, it would.
I feel for her.
I really do. I get it. And trust me, your father doesn't want to know except for the fact that he needs to know. He'd rather not know, but he needs to know. These are these things in life that, sometimes in life, the things you don't like have to be done. And it's creepy. We don't like it. And especially young girls in this whole thing, it's kind of gross and icky. And you don't even want it to be happening, let alone let other people know you're be happening. I get it. Just, it just is. There's some things in life that we just have to get used to.
It gets easier, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
But I still get a little tinge of ooginess whenever I get uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable.
It's private.
There's no way around it. But
it's very intimate.
But you have to know.
Yeah.
Because it's a medical thing. All right.
My 15-year-old daughter told me that she wants to start a treatment to change her gender. Am I being a bad parent by refusing? How can I deal with this the best way possible?
Well, my question would be why you're refusing. If you're refusing because you're concerned about this kind of change, why their hormones are still changing, why their body's still developing, but you're generally supportive about the idea. But can we wait until you've stopped growing? Essentially, you've done the basic stop growing. Can we wait until your hormones have settled down and all that kind of thing? And since you're responsible until you're 18, you know, I can. If that's the reasoning, if it's a medical issue, say, look, then it's okay. Then no, you're not being a bad parent. If you're saying I don't think they should you know go through this because I don't believe in the transgender issues or the whole you know uh, you should be your assigned gender or whatever it is, then that's a different issue. You know what I mean? There's two ways. There's a group of people who don't believe in transgenders. They don't believe that people can be born in the wrong body and that using medicine to fix it is acceptable. And if that's the reason you're saying no, then you should reconsider your motivations. I'm not going to say you should reconsider your position, but you should reconsider your motivations. But if the issue is I'm not comfortable with giving you hormone blockers and hormone changers while you're still developing and still growing. It's got nothing to do with you being transgender or not. It's just the underlying medical issues. And I prefer you to wait until you're 19, 20, where your body is actually settled down.
Yeah.
Yeah, then that's a different issue.
That's a different issue.
But that's a discussable issue as well. That's an issue where you can sit down and have a discussion with the doctor and you can work all these things out and you can come to a reasonable a reasonable outcome, because there's medical issues and then there's psychological issues, and psychological issues play a big role in your physical health, and so it's not a simple equation. This is a very difficult medical decision between doctors and patients, and when you're dealing with teenagers, parents.
I don't understand why counseling isn't required for a gender reassignment.
I think, if memory serves, and I could be wrong, that the patient does have counseling, has to have counseling. Okay. I think as a general rule of thumb. But family counseling is probably a good idea when you're dealing with teenagers.
Yes.
Okay, so we've got time for one, maybe two questions. So we got.
When did you realize that your mother-in-law will never treat you as one of her own children, regardless of what you do?
Well, why would you expect her to?
I wouldn't expect that from your mother.
And why would you expect her to? And secondly, why would you want her to? You have a mother. Or you've had one.
I had a mother. Yes, she can't be my mother.
Now, I kind of get. Now, if what you actually mean is you want to be more fully accepted into the family.
That's another thing, though. Your mother's always made me feel very welcome, and my whole family too. She's very gracious.
So, but yeah, it's like it goes back to the one earlier. You don't why are you expecting this out of people? The problem isn't them. The problem is your expectations. Does she treat you nice? Are you part of the family? Be happy. A lot of people have mother-in-laws they can't stand. Appreciate what you have rather than what you don't.
Really?
A lot of people have mother-in-laws that they can't stand. And if you have one that you like, that you'd actually like to treat you as a member of the family, be happy with that. God bless you, good Lord. How many people would like to ask to have a nice, pleasant mother-in-law?
Yes.
All right, we got one more.
Last one. Is it okay to never tell your child they're adopted?
Oops, I left this thing on. That's a difficult question.
That's a hard one.
I think if they ask, you probably have an obligation to tell. If it were me, at some point I would, because you don't want to have a dishonest relationship. The question is, when is the appropriate time? And there's no easy, quick answer for that. I can't think of any way that you can have like a checklist and then say, okay, here's the time to tell. It's one of those things you're just going to have to do it by the seat of your pants. That if you're a loving, caring parent, you'll know when it's the right time.
You do tell them after they turn 18, but I think the general rule of thumb, if they ask.
Yeah, well, but I think you should probably tell them before they're 18. Just because these things have a tendency to come up, and you're gonna have to deal with it when it comes up, because otherwise you're lying to them. And it's one thing to kind of, with a 5 or 6-year-old to kind of brush it aside. It's another thing with a 12-year-old.
Yes.
And so my thing is, you don't want to have a dishonest relationship because you don't want to poison something that is beautiful.
Yes.
And so, but there's also, it's not an easy question because, when's too soon? When's the right time? And it's also, there comes a point where it's a medical issue. Someone, their doctor's going to ask them about their family medical history. And if they tell you yours, it's not relevant.
Yes. I thought of that too.
So, it's going to come up. And when it comes up, you want to be ahead of it rather than behind it. Reduce the trauma. There's going to be trauma with it regardless of what you do. So you want to have it in the least traumatic way possible. Because that's an earth-shattering thing. The world you thought as it wasn't. But then you realize, okay, it really was. It's just, but I can imagine you told me, I'm not your biological parent. I've just raised you. That's an earth-shattering thing for a while until you can wrap your head around that the parent is the one that raised you, not the one that necessarily gave you your
Give
DNA.
birth to you, yeah.
Yeah. But there's always a call for those people, for adopted children. They know. There's an instinct, right? I swear to God, there's an instinct. They know. They'll know. And some of them want to go and search out, and some don't. Search out their birth family, and others don't. But they should have the right to make that decision. And speaking about the rights to make that decision, it is the decision that it's time to be over. From me and Lovey, we want to thank you for joining us. We want to remind you can go send Lovey a letter at love@latenightLove.us. You can visit us at Locals. You can find me at Twitter at JazzRack. You can find us at anchor.fm/latenightLove or various podcast networks. You can find us at latenightLove.locals.com. You can find us on all the various social media platforms. And from me and Lovey, we want to thank you for joining us. And please remember to love everybody.